Hi, everyone. Welcome to 10 Years On, Organizing in Diaspora and Exile. My name is Mazen, and I'm the Managing Director and Legal and Judicial Director of the Tahrir Institute for Middle East Policy, or TIMEP. Today's event is being hosted as part of TIMEP's 10 Years On, Organizing in the MENA region, a project launched in December of last year to platform those who have organized, are organizing, and will organize in and on the MENA region, on the ground, online, and in exile. Increasingly in the last decade, and as MENA governments and non-state actors have aggressively responded to popular demands for change, repressive tactics and violence, among other factors, have intensified, and they've targeted a large swath of the population, growing the MENA region's diaspora and exile communities, particularly those who previously were involved in mobilization and organizing on the ground. Today, we're privileged to be joined by four remarkable advocates. They'll share with us their stories, reflect on how Libyans, Yemenis, Egyptians, Syrians have organized abroad, and share their insights on the challenges, opportunities, and paths ahead, in a conversation moderated by Samia Errazzouki, who herself is a Moroccan-American pursuing her PhD, who brings her own personal and professional lens to this story of diaspora as a former Morocco-based journalist and research associate. Samia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mai, and it's a pleasure to be here and share this space with all of you. So before I introduce our panelists, just wanted to go over some brief notes that this event will be recorded and available online, and that we encourage folks to sort of engage with online discussion through the hashtag 10YearsOn, and to please feel free to send questions throughout the course of the event, which we will get to towards the last few minutes. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists and then proceed with opening up a discussion on this very timely topic. So Mina Thabet is an Egyptian human rights defender, activist, and researcher who has been working with minority communities to combat discrimination and violence against religious and ethnic minorities and promote diverse cultures, languages, and religious freedoms in Egypt. He co-founded the Maspira Youth Union and the Egyptian Coalition for Minorities, both of which were prominent social movements that promoted religious and ethnic minorities' rights in Egypt. He moved to Scotland in 2017 to study peace building. Later, he moved to London for work. And then we also have Asma Khalifa. Asma is a Libyan activist and researcher who has worked on human rights, women's rights, and youth empowerment since 2011. From 2014, she focused on peace building and conflict transformation in Libya. Her work in Libya includes improving women's participation in local government and addressing gender-based violence. Currently, Asma is pursuing a PhD at the German Institute for Global and Area Studies, researching civil war and gender relations. Next, we have Afrah Nasser, who's a researcher in the Middle East and North Africa division of Human Rights Watch, correct? Investigating humanitarian law violations and human rights abuses in Yemen. Prior to joining Human Rights Watch, she was an activist, independent journalist, and analyst reporting on Yemen's social and political changes for over a decade. She's also the co-founding editor of the Sana'a Review. Nasser has written for and made appearances on numerous news outlets, including Al Jazeera, The Atlantic, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, among others. She's also the recipient of the Committee to Protect Journalists International Press Freedom Award in 2017, among other awards. She was also named by the BBC as one of the 100 women who changed the world and has been featured 3 times as one of the 100 most influential Arabs by Arabian Business magazine. Nasser holds a BA in English Linguistics from Sana'a University and an MA in Communication from the University of Gothenburg in Sweden. And then finally, we have Mazen Darwish. Mazen is a Syrian lawyer and free speech advocate. He is the president of the Syrian Center for Media and Freedom of Expression, founded in 2004. He has worked for many years on human rights, freedom of expression, and freedom of the press in Syria. News organizations, including Reuters and the Associated Press, have described him as one of Syria's most prominent activists. He was imprisoned in Syria from 2012 until his release in August 2015 and was awarded the UNESCO Guillermo Cano World Press Freedom Prize on World Press Freedom Day. So quite an accomplished panel that we have going here, and sort of just to broadly start this out by saying and noting that every member of this panel has left their home sort of base within the past 10 years of the aftermath of the Arab Spring, which I think is an important point to note as we open up the discussion. So just to sort of open it up very broadly, I want to ask all of you to sort of reflect on the experience and work of your respective communities abroad, and also on your personal experiences, perhaps starting on the more positive notes, right? So what have been some of the successes that you have realized in mobilizing abroad, and how are you defining successes? I'll open it up and start with Asma, and then just proceed from there.
Thank you, Samia, for the introduction and the question. Success. I would consider that the ability to I think plan strategically ahead and have projects that over the years include networks and foster collaborations with other Libyan organizations or individuals is one of the successes of being abroad, because you have the distance and the time to be able to think about a project that is longer than 6 months and 3 months, unlike the reactory, usually nature of campaigns inside the country or projects. It's also being able to meet in and organize in diaspora, not only from one country but across the region, was also very important for success in ways of learning from other people.
Great. Afrah, feel free to jump in. Yeah.
Yeah. First, I need to say that I'm really honored to be in this panel. First time I meet Mina, and I'm really glad that we're in the same panel. And Mazen, it's just an honor. I still remember with you, like being in the UN Security Council when your wife was campaigning to release you, and I was just, I was just praying, and this is one success, that we managed to get you out. You're here. You're doing the work for others also, which is very important. And I'm moved by your picture of Razan in Syria as your Facebook profile picture. So I'm really honored that, like, I'm living this moment, that you're out and I'm in the same panel with you. And Asma, I'm honored also to call her a friend. I met Asma several times in different conferences pre-COVID-19 era. And I remember we always used to get as a group of exiled activists, and we sit in our own corner. And I didn't realize that we had so much in common, me and Asma. And I understood that when she did an interview with Deutsche Welle, a really long interview in Arabic that I recommend everyone in exile to watch it, because Asma revealed her vulnerability and what does it mean to be in the diaspora in ways I think that a lot of people will relate to. So just thank you for everyone and for considering me to be part of this panel. The success for someone who grew up in Sana'a, I think it's such a privileged position to be inside and outside, meaning inside Yemen but outside Yemen. But it also has some risks that I don't feel that I'm here or there. But one of the things, as when I was a journalist, it was me who broke who broke the story, the news to my family when the war broke, when the war started in 2015, because the electricity was shut down and people didn't really understand what these explosions mean. And it was me who called my family and told them the Saudi-led coalition began its decisive storm military operation. And so I think this is a very interesting position, that you can be outside and monitor and look and think strategically, as Asma was talking about, and really understand the bridge between the conflict in your country and the outside world, and vice versa. I try to think of it as a success, because I think I am in a privileged position where I try to influence inside and try to influence the outside. This is on a very individual level, but as a collective, Yemen in particular, it was built on the shoulders of the people in the diaspora and the liquidity that they're sending back home. So it's with the pandemic, I try to see that the world is really one small village, because one virus really just, it doesn't understand the borders, and it just affected everyone everywhere. So I try to think that we are connected in ways that we don't even understand. The climate change crisis by itself is just, it tells you a lot. So that realization I would have never understood if I was in Harat al-Raqqas in Sana'a in Yemen. My ambition back there was like just to get out of Harat al-Raqqas, just to leave that neighborhood. But now I feel I need to be more responsible of the privileges that I have and act upon it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. I think this point of connectivity is especially relevant, considering that, one of the silver linings of, the pandemic is that this panel is able to be organized. And, one of the sort of questions that we'll deal with is the spectrum of exile, right? Possibilities of returning and not returning, which is something that Mazen can give us a lot of sort of specific insight on the context of Syria, and perhaps sort of, in light of the unfolding situation, have there been successes? I mean, Afrah had briefly mentioned your release being one of them, but sort of, have there been other successes that you have been involved in mobilizing, and what do you find as being successful in terms of mobilization abroad?
Thank you, Samia, and thank you, Afrah, and all of the distinguished panelists. Really, I'm very glad and honored to be with you all, and thank you for the Tahrir Center for their invitation. I agree with Afrah. I sometimes use success. It's a little bit complicated or even difficult for me or for the Syrian in general, or many other activists in several countries. Before even before the revolution, I have banned of travel. So for me, just to have the possibility to go out of Syria more than 10 years, this is a succeed. But in the same time, now I can't go back. So I don't know if this is, I can, to keep working. Relaunching the center after 15 of the members, not only me, also there is other 14 of my colleagues arrested with me, and there is Razan, and as Afrah also mentioned, was kidnapping with other colleagues, and until now we don't know anything about them. So after this huge disaster in NGO, to succeed to relaunch the center again and rework inside Syria and outside Syria, this is maybe succeed, but in the same, a lot of our colleagues kidnapping, we don't know anything about them. Some of our colleagues who's arrested with us, they die under torture. So I don't know also if I can consider it as a succeed. This is the problem in this situation like Syria. I think the most important thing that we keep working, keep fighting, using the universal jurisdiction for the crime happened in Syria. This is maybe part from the benefit to be outside, to keep the file on the table, accountability, not allow to the Lord of the War to go to political agreement without recognize the need of the victim themselves. This is something I think we benefit from to be outside, and while the war still continue in Libya, in Yemen, and Syria, I don't think any one of us will feel satisfied or feel that there is a true succeed in this, and people and civilian die and killed daily.
Yeah, absolutely. Mina, insight from your experience working in Egypt about, any successes that you have been involved in or that you have noted, or how do you define success mobilizing abroad?
Yeah, thanks, Samia. And I hear echo the Afrah, what she said about. I believe that she reflected on this fact that the first success we have, that we are all here and we are all speaking and we are all exchanging ideas and exchanging our experiences. But before I got into it, I would like to thank you for moderating this discussion, and thanks to Tahrir Institute for inviting us and holding such an important event. I would like to speak more about the opportunities that being in diaspora, being outside of our own countries had offered us. I believe most of these have been successes. The ability to meet together without fear, the ability to be the freedom of fear, of being together, exchanging ideas, the freedom from being worried that at the door we will find a police officer who would take us and put us in jail. The freedom of fear of hurting others. And sometimes we were very afraid to hold a meeting or very afraid to speak about certain issues or certain topics because we are afraid to hurt those who are around us, those who invited us in, or we are afraid to speak our minds or express our hearts or what we think. This is not here. This is not in the diaspora community. So you can express what you think. You can express it freely. You are not afraid of saying anything. However, this does have some limitations. Still does have some limitations in Egyptian context because they are taking some families of activists abroad. Their families, their relatives, the people they care about, they're taken in sort of hostages. Sometimes you are afraid of speaking out, or you have some worries that if you cross certain lines, that you might hurt some people in there, even those who you are campaigning for their release or their freedom or their safety. So I would consider that freedom of fear is one of our biggest successes in abroad, in organizing abroad. The freedom of organizing, that you can organize abroad, you can choose the whatever form that you would like to organize yourself, and whatever structure you would like to organize yourself, and whoever you would like to organize with. There is no limitations. The state doesn't put limitations on your freedom to oppose anyone. Like even in the country itself that you live in, you can be free to oppose the country, oppose the government, oppose officials. You can criticize them. So freedom of expression is a very important gain. Freedom from fear is very important gain. Being close to advocacy venues, it is a very, very, very essential and important gain on success that we have right now. Now, communities in diaspora are more close to advocacy venues, are more close to bringing the story to these people, to bring the story to other communities and share what is happening there, and being able to more strongly to express what the truth, what is happening there, and spreading the word and giving people ideas and giving people the true image of what is happening on the ground, not only the story. Being able to produce a different story, a different narrative, your story, opposing the government story. So I think this is one of the main gains or the main successes that we have right now. The use of international instruments, the use of, as Mazen have just reflected on, that we now are more able to use international instruments, the international law. We are now more able to put pressure on decision makers. We are now more able to being there, like very close, in close proximity. This doesn't mean that we were not there. We didn't do anything before. No, of course, a lot of let's say civil society groups or a lot of activists, a lot of organizations have been doing great job for like decades now on human rights issues across the region, not only in my country or countries of our colleagues, but in many countries across the region. But what I'm trying to say, that the opportunities now are greater, the opportunities now are more available, the availability to go there, the close proximity that we have now to decision makers are offering us much more space to work on. Yet we still have some limitations due to the current situations in many countries. I believe also I can understand that there are extreme limitations on certain lines in countries like Libya for safety of the people on the ground, countries like Yemen, countries like Egypt, and of course like Syria. There's still so many restrictions on, although we have these freedoms and we have this advantage, but we still have limitations.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think, leads perfectly into the next question. I mean, just to sort of recap and highlight, you know, at least from my perspective, I think one of the great successes has been through, you know, being in the diaspora and exile, you're more able to sort of be involved in more trans-regional networks and activism and advocacy, and to sort of see the connections between, you know, Libya, Yemen, Egypt, Syria, you know, and I think having those conversations and being in those spaces is conducive to, you know, mobilization. When you mentioned, you know, the emerging trend of reprisals in Egypt, of authorities kidnapping and imprisoning family members of those that are involved in advocacy abroad. We've seen this as a growing trend, not just in Egypt, but elsewhere. In the case of Morocco, we are starting to see the state, you know, targeting Moroccans living abroad. So I wanted to sort of, you know, delve into sort of the darker side of, and the more difficult and challenging side of activism abroad, and how that's changed within the past few years, especially now that we're seeing more people leaving, right? So I'll just sort of open it up by posing broadly, what have been some of the challenges and the risks that you have faced in mobilizing abroad, either from your own experience or from, you know, the experiences of those that you know that work with you, sort of evolving state policies, contending with surveillance, and this issue that Mina heart-raced about, you know, your families facing the possibility of retribution. Feel free to jump in if anyone wants to start off this.
I can jump in, and but first I wanted to ask Mina, and maybe you can answer that later, Mina. But like, my question is that aren't those rights should be guaranteed to everyone? They're like just basic human rights: freedom of expression, the freedom to assembly, the freedom to organize. These are rights that should be guaranteed regardless of where you are. It's not like a bonus just because you're living in the West. It's like a bonus, and I think we shouldn't be like thankful, you know, like that gratitude for taking your right. It's your right. So that was just one question to Mina. But to me, the downside to being in the diaspora, yes, I completely agree with, like, it's horrible what's going on, the fascism in Egypt and how it's spreading even to outside. And I recall here what my friend in the Committee to Protect Journalists, Sharif Mansour, is going through with his daily tweets, recalling how fascism and the police state and the oppression has affected him and his family, where his cousin now, and this is like, it's happening in other places as well, not only in Egypt and not only you know, to our friends in the US, but it's what we hear from our friends living in Europe and US, and it's and there is a really deep crisis and governance in our countries, and I think this is unsustainable, and it will backfire sooner or later. And with that comes in my own experience comes the survival guilt, where I'm. It's been approximately 9 or 10 years since I've been away from Yemen, and I can. It's not an exaggeration, but every day when I hit the switch on button of electricity, when I open the tap for a running water, when I take a shower, every day I still think of how these basic rights are unavailable in Yemen, and people are struggling on a daily basis, and I feel as if I survived, and I'm enjoying what should be our rights. It's really, really tough to know that you don't suffer that anymore when all your family are still in that hellish reality. And the only way I try to cope with it is by working. It's exactly what Mazen was talking about, to keep working. If I don't keep working, that survival guilt will just kill me. So, and alhamdulillah, I managed to be in a great position, and some of my best journalistic work were written in a cafe or at the floor in an airport, or it's not even in an office. It's just like with me feeling really displaced and taking that rage and writing. And I try to take that rage, and as Beyonce said, when life gives you lemon, make a lemonade out of it. But you try to take that and produce something good out of it. And I still feel uncomfortable with feeling comfortable in Europe. And I try to sometimes volunteer, sometimes, or all the time, watch documentaries just to stay grounded with that rage and that, like, that sense of I have to change injustices or try to elevate the situation. And so, yeah, survival guilt, I would say. Asma, what do you think?
Yeah, also for Asma, I mean, because I think Asma, speaking from the Libyan context, what's different and stands aside from, you know, Syria, Egypt, in Yemen, Morocco, other countries where we're seeing almost an authoritarian resurgence. Whereas the situation, how would you sort of characterize the risks and challenges of being involved with activism abroad in the Libyan context?
A lot of intimidation. It actually never stops, and we have to consider our families back home and our colleagues who are still working inside the country. But we in fact even received official letters from the Libyan representatives at the UN for once having my colleague speak at the Security Council on issues of sexual gender-based violence in the country. And we were terrified. We were thinking, like, especially like, because European states are so ready to offer their help in making the issue a bit more bigger than it is, and we were like so terrified that this would become like a big case of here is a Libyan state versus a bunch of women advocates. So it's scary, and the limitation, no matter how much freedom you have abroad, there is this limitation that is extremely hard, because not only you are trying to avoid, you know, causing harm for other people indirectly, but also because you want to stay relevant, right? You don't want to be too controversial. You want to publish the public still to hear you inside the country, even though the more years you spend abroad, the less they give you the right to even speak about their issues. But there is this sense that if I go too far with my opinions and my critique and my criticism, does that mean it's the end of my advocacy? Will they ever listen to me? And what does that mean? Am I going to be an advocate for, you know, Europeans or people who are of like-minded, and stop being relevant for people in Libya? And that continues to be my biggest fear and the biggest censor, which I really, really dislike. But yeah, I agree with Afrah. Besides the threats and the intimidation, etc., that you can worry about, it's the guilt that's the worst thing to live with on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, those sort of just thinking about this point of being in the diaspora and like that risk of just being in an echo chamber, right? And how that sort of is one of the consequences of being away. And sort of another point that I wanted to raise in this context, Mazen, Mina, if you want to chime in, you know, in response to the question of the challenges and risks, but also contending with the realities of staying in touch with people on the ground and the realities of surveillance, how you navigate that in your work, and sort of the overall risks and challenges that you have faced in the Egyptian and Syrian context, respectively.
Yeah, would you like to go, Mazen?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. But just like responding to Afrah, yes, I totally agree. It is supposed to be there's some fundamental rights that are guaranteed, and we are not supposed to be grateful. And then I'm not, like, I'm grateful for the opportunity to work on and to advocate for the rights of my people, but and to defend human rights freely. But this is a right. This is an obligation of the states that we live in. The only difference between them and our governments is that they just respect the law as far as it can be. You know, it's not ideal. Every country have a record of human rights violations, and we're not saying that we're living in the ideal societies. Of course not. There are violations, and there are many human rights violations. But the thing is, what is a space for people to object these situations and to try to change it and call those in power to be responsible for what they have done, and the freedom that you can put them under the public scrutiny. This is what we miss in our countries. Yes, what I'm trying to say that this is one of the gains that we were that were taken off us. We were denied from these fundamental rights. So when you have something that you were denied of, then this is a gain. But it doesn't mean this is the ideal situation. It's not supposed to be like that. And reflecting on the challenges and limitations, as I just said, and then our colleagues and friends just echoes, I would like to echo their same concerns, that we do sometimes put so many limitations ourselves, like self-censorship on ourselves when we approach some issues. We all the time we put in our mind some sort of risk assessment to what would happen to our communities, what will happen to the people that we care about, what will happen if we did something. We can see that on the ground, like someone who called, like we can see that some people who have been doing advocacy work or been having some sort of activism abroad, how that reflected on their families, and how that reflected on their like close people they care about. So we all the time we are putting this into consideration. This is an extreme limitation. However, it by no way have the same weight of limitations that you have back in your country. I think the diaspora, the diaspora communities, let me speak about Egypt more. The diaspora community from Egypt still young and still have so many to learn. But what I can say that I think many of us have learned a lot, and one of the gains that we have also is to communicate with other diaspora communities and learn from their experience, and learn from their successes and their failures, to change the same fears and the same concerns that we have, and try to find a way to overcome these fears and these challenges. I think this is the main let's say issue here, and we as of diaspora communities from the Middle East and North Africa, I think we need to work on getting closer to each other, learning from each other, and helping each other.
Yeah, Mazen, so I mean, very specific and unique experience in the Syrian context too, right? When it comes to sort of the challenges and the risks mobilizing abroad. If you wanted to speak on that from your own experience, or from your colleagues and friends and loved ones.
Yeah, thank you, Samia. And I share the main line with Mina and Asma and Afrah, as they said, but also maybe in Syria, because it's maybe more complicated, and Syrian now, they are everywhere, and we are talking about millions of refugees. And here also to make balance between the safety and the security of the team, who's also even inside Syria, working, some of them in area under control of the regime, some of them area controlled from ISIS or al-Nusra, some of them working in an area under the self-administration in the Kurdish area, those who's in Turkey. those who's in Lebanon, in Egypt, some of our also team. So to make balance and how you can address your value as a human rights organization and regarding the international law. By example, we consider the Turkish in Syria as occupation, but to use this occupation Turkish military force in Syria, this will cost a lot for those who's in our team who's living in Turkey, and to accuse the Lebanese government regarding the Syrian refugee camp or the hate speech against them, or so what about the team in Lebanon? So always it's not easy to make this balance, how you keep your principles, your value, how you keep stuck to your professionalism, at the same time to put in your consideration the team, their family. Again, since I start, by example, in accountability, I stop dealing with my brothers. They are living inside Damascus under the area controlled from the government, and have several cases in the government. So for me, to put them in dangerous just because they are my brothers, or to cut your relation. This is not easy, and especially as I told you, we have risk assessment for 7 players, not only 1 player. And how you can consider also the divided inside the Syrian society, because we are still in the war, 10 years war, and there is a huge problem and crime and so inside also the Syrian community, when you are talking about accountability for any crime, and this is something we faces in Koblenz in a few weeks before, when one of the de facto was arrested and charged. So for a huge number of Syrians, he's de facto, he's hero. Should be not to be in the prison and a war crime suspect or criminal. So all these, it's really sometimes
Can I ask you, Mazen? Sorry, Samia, to hijack this, but I really want to ask Mazen, from your great experience, rich experience, mentally, how do you deal with this complexity? Because Syria is not easy. Working on Syria, you just mentioned, you just laid how many are outside, even inside. You have so many Syria, not one Syria, so many Syria. So mentally, how do you have like a whiteboard? Do you write the thing? Like, how do you do the work? How are you able to simplify it for yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Afrah. Really, it's not easy. And first, when I also maybe personally, it's hard because I went to prison early in February 2012. There is another story, another Syria, one demand, one problem. And after 4 years to be outside in Syria, and there's a lot of things happened. We have ISIS, Nusra, and when I realized, okay, what is the meaning of ISIS? I started trying to understand what happened in this forest. But it's not easy. Now I can say that I sometimes I need to work as not Syrian. I need to consider myself not a Syrian. To make this balance, to make this to keep the this level of professionalism of the organization. I need to consider myself as someone from other country, and sometimes this is the only way to also to control my feeling. In the end, I'm a Syrian citizen. This is my country, and how you can make also balance with yourself, with your feeling, those my family, my friends, my but also there is a law, and there is limit. I should. Again, it's not easy, but also day after day. Some of these, even to learn how you control your feeling, how you manage to deal with these problems. It's by experience. Sometimes day by day we learn. Every day we learn more.
Learning by doing. Learning by doing.
Yeah.
But I think it was a very important point when you mentioned work as not Syrian. And sometimes, you know, I take inspiration from Western Yemen experts, because they, like, very, very often, not all of them, but very often, they have like self-entitlement to preach about what's happened, like without having even the basic knowledge. And from that you get some, like, yeah, I'm gonna work on Yemen as if I'm not Yemeni, and I'm just a researcher, I'm an advocate, let me use the skills, the tools that I have. It's not easy to put your emotions away, but with time you, and with anger, with a lot of anger, you're just angry about the injustices, about the self-entitlement, and yeah, family.
Yeah, and just I want to add, this is also inside the organization, because maybe this is the first time the team could be in dangerous and not me. Usually I'm the first one who go to the prison several times. So now also this is some time of, oh my God, if anything, if I say anything, if I harm anyone of the team, I'm not there. So this is the first time I feel that it's some kind of shame that I lead this team and I put them in dangerous while I am safe. This is also a new experience for me in general.
Yeah, that's definitely also segueing into the next question. And the other point I wanted to raise, Mazen, you had talked about, you know, not being able to communicate with your brothers, as sort of, you know, at least with the Moroccan context, how similar that is in sort of my experience and those of my colleagues, of the constant and emerging and enduring reality of surveillance, and, you know, no longer being able to have like just the very banal conversations with your family members out of risk that, you know, you're telling your family members who don't know much about technology to download encrypted apps, and they're saying, I don't know how to use this application, but trying to explain to them like this risk of surveillance sort of, I think, is also very specific to the Moroccan experience. But Mazen and Afrah, as well as Asma, you all raised this point of survivor's guilt. And I know this is a very personal and intimate question, but, you know, considering that all of you have left your countries within the past 10 years, and you all face different realities when it comes to the prospects of returning home, right? So aside from this point in question of survivor's guilt, what have been sort of the more, you know, personal experiences that you've had to endure, you know, that realization that you are in exile, that you are in the diaspora, and accepting it, and even just like navigating, you know, everyday bureaucratic obstacles in whichever country you're at, right? No, Asma, Mina, if you wanted to chime in, and then we can move to Afrah and Mazen for more specific insight from their experiences.
Okay. Well, I think the resistance of being a diaspora, or of being an outsider, you know, it's you spend years, but then at the same time you are deeply connected to the issues. You are only sometimes working on the country. There is the survivor's guilt sometimes leaves you with no interest for anything else but work, no hobbies, no no free time that you could spend doing something else other than work. And so your whole identity is a conflicted mess of wanting to be there at the same time and not being able for a myriad of reasons. So it's the resistance really that you still want to stay connected, And I think I've came to terms only very recently. I've been away now for 6 years, but only recently I've realized, oh, well, oh my God, I am a diaspora, but I will be a better diaspora. I will not be disconnected. I will be, I have a platform. I'll open it up for Libyans inside Libya. I'll give the opportunities for others. I'll do something good with it, you know, because there's also, I don't know about the other countries, but in Libya, it was the diaspora that returned after 2011 to govern the country. It was the diaspora that went into power, and it was the diaspora that was treated other Libyans, some of them, of course, I'm not generalizing, but treated Libyans as if they were accomplices of Gaddafi's regime. So there was an entitlement, as Afrah has said, to governing and to leading the country, and they've done such a shit job that it's rooted an insecurity about becoming something like that, something that is no longer is no longer directly connected, but it feels it's entitled to owning the issues and the solutions to these issues. So yeah, so it's I can't tell you how many years people would say, well, you're in the diaspora now, and my answer would be like, no, I'm not. I'm not. Or that I would be invited to certain events that's like about expatriates, and I wouldn't attend. I would not attend such things because I'm still, you know, like, no, I'm not. So it's yeah, it also makes you struggle to settle in, right? In any location that you are in, you don't form deeper connections and friendships. You don't stay. You don't, you know, you don't create roots. Basically, you're constantly battling the sensation that you need that deep connection to be with the country you're from, or the causes you are from, and not really the place you are in. So it makes living sometimes also a bit miserable, I have to admit.
Yeah, Mina, in your experience, sort of that transition abroad and coming to that realization.
Well, I maybe comparing to our colleagues here, I could be the newest member of the diaspora community abroad.
مرحبا.
اللي هو سنة أولى حب, like سنة أولى something.
Yeah,
when they're like in the school.
Diaspora kindergarten. Well, I don't feel, for now, I don't feel much disconnected from my country most of the time. I don't know, like when I speak to my friends who went back, my colleagues who were studying here and decided to go back, who of course doesn't have political like past political activities or activism. So when they speak to me, like, I feel that this is not the country I was like living like 3 or 4 years ago. This is not the situation that I was in like 4 years ago. Just 4 years ago. This is not a long time. It hasn't been a long time, and so much have changed. What I am afraid of right now is that after a certain period of time, I don't know how long, when I came back, would I feel I still belong or not? I don't know. This is very, very concerning to me. The thing is, most of us are in involuntary diaspora. We are not here only by our choice. I would argue that maybe I would choose to be somewhere else or to live somewhere else, but I will be comfortable when it's my decision, not the decision I was forced to take, or it's my option, not an option that I was forced to take. Like, you know, it's very hard for you to feel that you are not welcomed in your own country, or you are threatened. It's not like welcome, but like you are threatened to be there. That you will be living in a in a context of non-stopping fear. All the time you are afraid. So in terms of how the challenges to the new living, or to feel that you belong to the community you're living in, I think it is really challenging. It's so many obstacles that you have to overcome. So many things that you do differently. For example, in the UK, they drive on the left. Sorry, they drive on the right. We drive on the left. So when you just cross the street, most of the time you can see a kid in the driver's seat, but he's not the driver. You can see his father is beside him. This is a very simple. This is a very simple thing. You can say
this is called cultural shock, Mina. Oh, Mina, we have to teach you. Like, we've been in this place so long ago.
Yeah, it's, the how you deal with the bureaucracy in the country, how you deal with the system, the healthcare system, how you deal with the law. So how you understand the context, how do you understand the cultures of the communities that you live in. So this is different, and how you understand the politics, which is really important element of the diaspora communities. How do you understand the politics in the countries that you live in right now? How deeply complicated and how deeply complex these issues are, and it would take you years and years and years of just trying to grasp a very small part of most of these issues. It's really challenging to feel that you are at home. You need now, look, for the past years of our lives, most of our lives, like I bet most of us lived in their countries like for at least quarter century, maybe. So it is hard that you can call someplace else home that you didn't spend the same amount of time at. You didn't have roots at, you didn't have friends at, you didn't have connections, you didn't have memories as much as you have back in your own country. So these all are challenges that facing us. But what I can say that means of communication had made it easier to stay connected, to stay up to date with what is happening back home. At least just grasp some, so like at least the very least of what is going on. You're still aware of what is happening.
Definitely. I want to, before I pass it on to Mazen and then wrap up so that we can dedicate some portion to the questions and answer portion, I want to remind those that are participating to feel free to send along your questions, and dedicate the remainder of the time to answering those questions. But before doing so, Mazen, I mean, in our previous conversations, you had sort of mentioned some of your own personal experiences navigating the bureaucracy and this question of being in exile. So if you wanted to sort of touch upon that.
Yeah, thank you, Samia. Yeah, and as Asma said, I'm not in exile. I'm just in short trip. I will go back any time, feeling like this. So, yeah, it's still, you know, when I came 2016 to Berlin, one of my best friend, he told me that they can go to Berlin before me. So he told me first month we stay with my wife, we buy a carton dish or plastic cup, because it's a few months, 1 month, 2 months, and we will go back. He told me just before I came with you, I have a huge problem with my wife, because I bring the Frigidaire with 2 years only guarantee. If I pay more 50 euro, I will have 5 years guarantee. And she's shouting to me, why you don't bring 5 years guarantee? And for me also, you know, as I told you, when I reached Berlin, I was not happy because I can't find the contract less than 1 year to rent a flat. I'm looking for 6 months, and the owner refuse and insist for 1 year. I sign the contract and feel that, oh my God, we will lose a lot because maybe we'll go after 3 months back. And this is a legal issue. How like? And a few days I was in the bank looking for the loan, and I'm angry because they not accept to give me 25 years loan because my age. So they only can give me loan for 20 years. So this is how after 5 years diaspora, how things also move or change. But until now, really, I think I spent time inside Syria more than in Europe, even physically, talking with the people, meetings, works, the writing, reading. It's all about Syria. So sometimes, really, when I go outside the office, recognize I'm not in Syria, because you are totally your work, your communication, your speaking, and this is not healthy. To be honest with you, this is not something good. But also, when we are talking about bureaucrat and being here, it's not an easy issue, and we are talking about organizational level, because we work in Syria, we are registered in France at that time, but we are happy when we're working since 2004 until 2011 in Syria that we can hide any activity. So this is one of our strengths in SCM, that we do activity and we never the authority or the security service know about them. And we came here to Europe and see it's the outreach and how you need to have a communication department and communication manager. And when we start put this in website, I feel scared. Oh my God, why we speak about what we do? This is not us. And we have a friend and a communication manager, and he told me, Mazen, the culture of the SCM, the culture of the employee, to hide the work. And this is, I cannot work in this environment. I'm communication manager. This is not my, and anyone come to him, tell me what you do, how this, that, and all feel, oh my God, we will speak about it. Is this normal? So all of these, like, to work under the bureaucratic law. We don't have anything called tax in Syria. We don't have something deal contract with the employee. They are our friend and colleague, and we fight together. We go to prison together. There is no salary. There is no this type. And now you need. We have first year we came to Europe and start working. We have 4 lawyers just to lead us how we can do this and that, and how we can be under the law. So yeah, it's not easy in different level, not only in the personally, but also to work and to act from Europe.
Yeah, definitely. So we have about less than 30 minutes, and we have a few questions already from participants. So I want to start off with this question from Badr that asks, sort of in both the personal and activism, work that you do, what are the strategies that you have adapted to maintain resilience, especially, in the light of setbacks and stagnancy? How do you sort of stay motivated and stay involved in the work that you do, in spite of all the challenges and risks that we covered? Afrah, if you wanted to jump in.
For me, one of the efficient ways is therapy, honestly. Mazen was speaking, this is not healthy. Absolutely. Psychologically, it's self-destruction, the type of work that we do. Asma was laughing, I'm not an exile, but behind that laugh, there is pain. There is it's like, I don't want to romanticize the position that we are, but it's really challenging. You try to take every day at a time, every therapy session at a time. You read books. And this is one of the things that I learned from Asma, from that program. You start to group yourself with people who have their own trauma because of the exile, and they become your own friends outside your home country. And that's also not healthy. I think you need to broaden your image. You know, the most challenging of growing up within the diaspora is that there is two parts of you, that you are growing as a person, but you're also growing within the diaspora. So you have your own like new personal commitments, new challenges, new learning experiences, new desires. Like once you leave 20s and you're in your 30s, different lifestyle, and then in the 40s. But that could have happened when you're back home and it's just blank and just as how everyone is around you. But here, like the things that I'm concerned about, it's different from my peers, my Swedish peers. They have a different background, and it's nice to have both. I think groups like this, and I would suppose that we would be having this conversation in a cafe in London because we're invited to a conference and having shisha and just chatting about how we're not here or there, and we're not there and we're not here, and but now it's different. This is also like really new, and it takes a lot of resilience. And I try to cut down a lot of my video calls with family, for example. Mina was talking about how the communication is made it easier, but with the pandemic, I'm just texting, and I try to save my energy. So it's every day you have to have those decisions, and really like acknowledging the benefits of psychological therapy made me really realize, like, no, everyone needs to have their own therapist, and it's fine. And and I'm sorry, in the Arab world, there is like a really screwed up mentality. Just because you say that I have some really dark thoughts, there is something wrong in my mind, people really, like in Yemen, they will tell you, صلي على النبي وصلي ركعتين, which is like go and pray two rak'ah, I don't know. But you tell them, like, no, but and then they take you to sheikh to read. Yani, there is a problem with like just acknowledging and respecting the signs, and I think this is one of the benefits that I enjoy here. And I just want to say one thing about like being with the cultural differences and cultural shock. Migration in Yemen, it's widespread. Like Yemenis, unfortunately, for a long time, they've been like hit by famine, conflict. Like if you read their history, this is not new. And even my grandfathers migrated to Ethiopia and married Ethiopian women and came back to Yemen because there was a war in Ethiopia. So I'm what you call like a third culture kid, like the child who's a product of two cultures, which is the Ethiopian and Yemeni. And I think if I can give an advice, is that you don't have to choose, like, oh, am I going to have the memories from back home or the new memories? It's all you. That's all you create your own world. You're a combination of these two worlds. And so even though I'm in Sweden, I would be cooking Ethiopian food and blasting some Yemeni music, and I don't know, and I'm drinking a Swedish coffee, and this is and I'm trying to enjoy bits of everywhere, and I'm very proud of that. I think so. It's fine to be a combination of. You don't need to. It's so boring to be of just one word, I think.
Yeah, I think this point about mental health is definitely a huge part of the strategies and resilience, right? If anyone wants to jump in and answer that, we also have another question that is quite timely, and want to spend some time to also discuss it, which is a question we got from Marie. How has the pandemic changed your experience of living in diaspora and being a diaspora activist, especially in light of travel restrictions and lockdown? If anyone wants to chime in on that.
I can go ahead. But at first, I want to say one thing about the about being resilient, and I really dislike this romanticism of resilience, especially for people of color, because it's like all of this bad, terrible things happen to you or your family or your friends. Oh, but it's okay. You're resilient. You will live through, and it's. I mean, you do it because there is no other way unless you give up. You give up on your life. So it's really sometimes not about finding ways to live. It's sometimes just surviving, and that's really hard. But I'll get to the. Today I was talking to a friend and I was telling them that my sister had another child. There was a birthday in the family, and I missed my family, and I can't. There is no way of seeing or traveling that we could meet each other, and I feel like I'm being out here and all of these birthdays are happening and anniversaries and events, and I'm missing out on a lot of memories making. So it's difficult. I don't have a positive note to add to it, except that I agree with Afrah, is that eventually you grow into making your own happy moments and contentment at being with yourself and doing things that you enjoy is the most important things.
Yeah. Mina, Mazen, this question of resilience and also how the pandemic has impacted the work that you do.
A lot of webinars. Not time to join all of these webinars. Yeah, just I want to continue with Afrah said. When I also released, I went 6 months to a special center for torture victim. And when I say it to some other prisoners that I do it, I went, I stayed 6 months, and this is very helpful. And one of them to me, you are Mazen Darwish, you should not say it in public. This is maybe this is will destroy your heritage or your name, or like so yeah. Even between the activists, not only the traditional families or in Yemen or in Syria, even between the activists, sometimes they feel shy to say that yes, I'm tired, I need therapy, or I need to This is very common, and I don't know if this is also part from the feeling of survivor guilty, that this is something like lecture, you should not do it or say it even. Corona affected our work a lot. Especially we part from our work with courts, build and bring victim and bring witness or defector to physically. This is a legal process. They can't send a letter or do it. They should came to the next to the judge and say their testimony. A lot of problem really with the confinement, and also the problem that especially those who's inside Syria or with the team or in this country. And now you need also to recognize the health problem of the health security. And what if one of the team also have corona? And how I told those who's working in documentation, by example, if there is attack or don't go and don't take the testimony or don't make documentation for the violation happened, and how this is his work, and how he will stuck in the health rules, and how he do his work. This is also some of our work. Really, it's hard, and we are confusion. That especially as those who's working in documentation violation center, it's part from our program. So this is their duty to go and to make the first response with the victim themselves or in this area, and told them keep distance and stuck in your house, and for him say don't work. So yeah, but as one of my colleagues said, we survivor from the Syrian security service, so we'll survivor also with coronavirus, no problem.
Corona is nothing compared to the muhawarat. Mina, if you want to maybe take a minute or two to also speak about, your content in Egyptian context.
From my point of view, resilience is to be built. None of us have been, equipped with resilience from the first moment of his life or political activity. We just develop that. And in order for us to develop it, there is all the time we need something to challenge it, to push back for us to be able to build this resilience. We're building it as time goes by, as we experience new experiences, as we go through new challenges, as we live more outside in diaspora. We build our resilience day by day, year by year, month by month, and situation by another. Like giving like an example as a culture shock that Afrah have raised about like this guy that I used to look at the left side. Now I'm looking directly at the right side, and I know how they go. I know I used to. I give you like a very fast thing, very brief thing. I used to walk the street like in my country. When we cross the street, we just look. There is no car. We just cross. That's it. Like it's very simple. Here you have to stop, press a button, and wait for the sign to give you like you can go. And at first I didn't do that. My friends was calling me, my European friends were calling me like crazy. Now I'm doing the same. If anyone did that from my European friends, I'm thinking, hey, are you crazy? Wait for the line. Wait for the light. So you build you change, you adapt by the time. So what is happening now is that from my point of view, a lot of us are adapting. Yes, it is challenging. And yes, you don't feel we have so many different feelings. We have like a mixture of feelings and a mixture of challenges that we are overcoming day by day. And I don't think that we have any other choice other than collapsing and just going to very bad places. But we just have to continue doing that. Responding very fast to the question regarding Corona, I think the coronavirus or the pandemic have affected our lives in so many ways, and of course it had affected our plans for advocacy, our work to advocate for the rights of our people. It even affected the people. If you are here to advocate for the rights of your people or to work with government officials, with UN officials, with the international institutions, all these institutions have been put on hold for a very long time, have experienced significant disruption in their in their work, in their schedules. Many events now, like many UN events, have been held online. Like never have, like it's like unimaginable. Like too many things have been put on hold all over the world, not only in our countries. And the thing is that most of our countries are working like normal. Like life is normal there most of the time, not like most of the time.
Yeah.
So it had an effect on our plans for the advocacy and our work. It have an effect on our personal life, on our lives. Most of the time, we in some countries that have extreme measures of social distancing, we were not able to go out. I'm talking in general, not about like the Egyptians. What I'm talking about, like Middle Easterns in diaspora. Like we most of the time we face this extreme measures of social distancing. We've been there for like a year now, or more than a year now. It's really affecting a lot of our physical health, our mental health, our psychological health. It had impacted not only our work but also our lives and our health situation, our advancement. We could have done so much work in this time, but we just our life just put on hold for a year or more now. So I think this is an effect, but at the same time, it's open to us an opportunity for so much connection that we didn't see. We can use technology, how we can employ technology in our communication. Now we are holding a meeting in 3 different time zones, or 4 maybe. So I believe that it does have an impact. Like it does have a very bad impact on our lives and our activities and our work, but it's still opened our eyes in so much opportunities that we didn't see or we didn't employ as much. So I believe that all the time we are evolving. The silver line here is that all the time we are evolving, we are adapting, and we learn.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of a good way to wrap this up on a sort of forward-looking note. And we got a question from Mohammed. What kind of organizing do you think needs to be done, and what do you think needs to be done to make a change? And perhaps more specifically, if you have suggestions for how policymakers, donors, and other international stakeholders can support the diaspora and their mobilizing efforts, keeping in mind we have like about 6 minutes left, so try to keep it very brief. If we just want to go around, starting with Asma, about like a minute each, I think that'll keep us within the time.
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges I see in terms of policy and organizing with the diaspora is that it only happens when there is something happening in a country, or the European government or other governments is having an interest because they have a new internal policy of some sort, or a vested interest. But I don't see a regular consultations that are more cross-sectional when it comes to policies. And that would be more helpful, I think, because also there's a tendency that you speak to one foreign officer or a policy maker, in 2 years you have to repeat yourself, and that's because also there is a lack of continuity of work. There's just like, oh, something is going on now in Libya, let's like invite this Libyan or that to tell us what's going on, but that never translates into a consistent well-informed understanding of the situation. So yeah, consultations, regular consultations.
Yeah, Afrah, less than, if you could keep it within a minute so we can, yeah.
I From my point of view, we lack a vision, a collective vision. I think activists like us, campaigners, we are so immersed in our own issues, which is legit, definitely. But we need also new energy for having like a collective vision. And for example, I love Asma, the feminist organization in Egypt, Nasra. Is that the name? Nasra. They have like a feminist vision for the region, and they try to do work. They don't publicize because they have their own challenges and concerns, but we need like broad vision. Samia, you worked in the online website Jadaliya, which has also like a media vision for tackling collective issues. So it's really about the vision and new energy, I think. And I encourage who watches us to think of that.
Yeah, Mazen, same question.
Yeah, I think vision and long-term strategy. This is something very important. And maybe this is from my experience in working in Syria. Maybe we need to stop building our strategy as a victim and ask the other just to have support us because we are victim, because we are miserable, because we are weak, and start focus on the common interest. So this is maybe I think better than just feeling that the other should support. They should support us. We are victim. We are. This is again from my really experience in Syria.
Yeah, Mina.
Yeah, I do agree. Like very fast. I do agree that our first priority should be, or our utmost priority should be, moving from the reactive approach to the strategic approach, to work on. I think one of our main like top priorities is that to find a way to organize and to abroad, and to find the link or to create the link between organizing abroad and organizing in our countries back there with a common strategy, with different rules, with different things to do, different, like, let's say, maybe different approaches, even though, but with the same vision, like the vision to bring about the change, with the same mission that we want to bring change to our communities. So I think moving from the reactive approach to the strategic approach would be an important thing to do, and to find way to organize ourselves in a better way abroad, while we have the freedom to organize, and we have freedom from fear, and to find the link and to establish the link between organized groups abroad and back home.
Thank you. Thank you, Samia, for moderating an insightful and dynamic conversation. And to Mina, Mazen, Asma, Afrah for your contributions. You've shared a lot with us personally, professionally, and it was such an insightful conversation, and I very much appreciate how honest and upfront it was. This is not easy, it is not romantic, but it's also your lives. So I very much appreciate you willing to share that with us. Today's conversation, at least for me, really drove home the importance of thinking critically about the diaspora's role and its positioning in a much larger conversation and mobilization toward change across the region and on the ground. We at TIMEP are really looking forward to continuing to convene conversations like this. This won't be the first. Sorry, it won't be the last. We also look forward to hosting the insights of those in diaspora and exile on our pages, in our writing, and to pursue programming along with partners who will be doing the same, and really recognizing the uniqueness and centrality of all of you as agents of change, in addition to what is going on the ground. To our audience, I want to thank you for your questions and participation. We look forward to hosting you later this month at what will be our last event as part of the 10 Years On project. And we look forward to finding other ways to continue engaging with each of you. And to the TIMEP team working behind the scenes that made this event possible, thank you. With that, I will leave you all, and thanks again so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.